There, yes.
Recording has started.
Yes. All right. Good day, and thank you for joining us. I am Marianne Gush, and my partner today is Judith Arachi from Nigeria. I'm from South Africa, and we will be debating, is it ethical to use genetic information for designing personalized education plans for children based on their genetic predispositions? And we will be arguing in the negative.
So in the way of introduction, genetic information, the field of genetics is rapidly evolving with the advent of innovative applications and technologies giving more insight into human health and disease diagnosis. The application of genetic information can be used for predictive and personalized treatment, regenerative medicine, and forensic genomics, which ultimately will be used to improve quality of life in the near future.
When we are looking at incorporating genetics into education, I think it's important that we keep in mind what the aims and objectives of education are. Education aims to develop well-rounded individuals with critical thinking skills who are prepared for diverse challenges, and also a system that nurtures growth, adaptability, and potential. So how can genetics possibly be used within education? Well, we imagined two ways. Firstly, genetic information might be used to help select fields of study most suited to learners, or alternatively, to adapt teaching and learning styles to suit learner preferences. Customizing education may be tempting, but it risks reducing complex human development to mere biology.
So while we await and continue to work towards a widespread awareness of genetic information and, of course, its potential application, using it to create personalized education plans may seem like a good practice. However, it will create various ethical issues around discrimination and privacy, which will not be healthy for our children, and will also likely be implicated in both intentional and unintentional harm. As we consider the role of genetics in schools, it is crucial to reflect on whether this approach truly aligns with the foundational goals of education and the values we hold for our learners' growth and potentials.
Some of our arguments to oppose the use of genetics within education are as follows. First of all, this would involve the large-scale sharing of intensely private information of minors, which could potentially be misused and even lead to discrimination based on genetic predispositions. There is also the likelihood of intentional or unintentional harm, much like the harm that was done when IQ test results were made available to educators in the past. I'm referring to a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago, when IQ tests were seen as the gold standard of measuring intelligence, which we today know it is not. And educators were given the test results of their students. This affected how educators treated and interacted with their students. Some students were left neglected and ignored, while others were pushed and pressured and encouraged more than the others. Eventually leading to really negative consequences in terms of the potential of those students, but also their reputation of education in general. We also need to be aware that genetic testing within education can lead to increased social inequalities for children, specifically from marginalized backgrounds, due to stigma and discrimination. There is also a lack of access to affordable testing and counseling services, which will serve to exacerbate existing inequities and also create new types of inequity. Furthermore, labeling students with genetic predispositions reinforces this idea of intellectual silos, which academia has been working hard to dismantle. We know that it is better for us to work in collaboration across disciplines. Multidisciplinary teams are the most effective because you get a whole picture, big picture view of the issue or the innovation that you are busy with. If we start labeling students with their genetic predispositions, we are just reinforcing those intellectual silos again, thus reinforcing the harm done by isolating fields of study. One also has to keep in mind that human beings are complex. What one is good at might not always be the same as one's calling. So we need to be aware of labeling and possibly limiting young people's options and learning resources based purely on biology. This can hinder a child's growth and potential for learning.
Okay. One of our points here too is that adaptation to accommodate individual learning style goes against the pedagogy of whole brain learning styles where multiple styles of input has proven most effective. You would also bear witness with me that even for now, we'll always try to encourage the use of multiple styles for teaching, which has been in practice and have proven to be very effective. Also, this limits the learner's ability to be adaptable to various environments and working styles in their work life. For long-term psychological impact, we do not know how those children will be affected by the need to live up to the genetic potential. Take, for instance, a child who has been told because of his genetic information can only be limited to, let's say, a particular course like history. The child now knows that he or she can go as far as being a medical doctor. But having to tell this child that because he has this learning inability or because he has a particular limitations as a result of his genetic information, the child cannot really see himself go beyond what he has been told he can study, even when he can go as far as being a medical doctor. So genetic information or the use of it may have a very long-term psychological impact on the child. It can also how it has been described from a specific field of study due to predicted challenges might affect motivation. It can reduce the child's self-esteem and also affect his health or mental health generally. This unknown risk is something that we cannot really quantify or even measure at this point. So it's something that we should try as much as possible to avoid since we really cannot manage it.
To address some of the points made by our opposing team, firstly, they mention the importance of understanding individual learning styles. Firstly, we need to be careful not to overly cater to individual learning styles, because if we teach our students only in one manner or expect them to learn in only one manner that's best suited to them, we are creating less flexible adults, less able to adapt to various working environments, and also less able to work with team members with varying and differing skills. Genetic information also is not needed to have an awareness of and to some extent cater for different learning styles. Teachers are aware of different learning styles and do adapt their style of teaching within the classroom fluidly as needs need to be met. Genetic information will not determine how teachers do this. Our opposing team also mentions the need to support unique needs within the classroom. However, I'd like to argue that this has more to do with having a diagnosis for a specific disorder, perhaps, and accommodating neurodiverse populations within the classroom rather than the need for genetic information about predispositions. The need to have a diagnosis and the ability to accommodate neurodiverse populations in the classrooms, again, does not need genetic information to do so. Diagnoses of neurodiversity are made worldwide and are accommodated within classrooms globally already.
And in response to the points that was made by our opposing team, there has never been a one-size-fits-all approach to our educational system for our children. It has all our children, even the existing educational system, has always approached the science and the arts behind the education. So we know very well that we need to apply different teaching styles to reduce the one-size-fits-all limitations. We also would also want to talk about using varying strategies as being fundamental in having education for the children. We don't depend, and it's not also advisable to depend entirely on the genetic data. I would also want to address this point of informed consent and privacy secure protocols. In the course of preparing for this presentation, we came across, or we tried to review certain literatures, and we got to know that there are more than 60 million educators globally. These 60 million educators individually have different backgrounds, different value system and belief system. So you would agree with me that there is no how they will want to understand a particular child that has a particular genetic information. Of course, the way that teacher A will address a particular issue will be different from the way teacher B will address it because of varying belief system and value system. So we would also want to emphasize here that making genetic information available entails handling over the most sensitive and personal information. And such a far-reaching release of genetic information cannot be guaranteed to be secured. We want to try as much as possible, even in the course of doing this, to protect our children's privacy and reduce, if possible, eliminate the risk of having them exposed to stigma and discrimination.
The next point our opposing team brought up was equitable access to resources. I'd like to make the point that an educator does not need genetic information to pinpoint which students require additional attention or assistance, or perhaps even extension. Educators themselves have received extensive training. They have supervisors, and there are educational psychologists who are trained and available and accessible and also affordable who can help and assist with this type of task, especially if you compare it to the lack of access and the cost of genetic testing. The opposing team mentions the long-term benefits of genetics within the classroom. I'd like to offer that it's perhaps long-term benefits or possibly consequences of using genetics within education. Basic genetic testing to get a simple diagnosis for an illness is already inaccessible to the majority of the African population. Extending the use of genetics into education will only widen existing inequalities. And as per my previous comparison to the past use of IQ test results, more harm than good is likely to result from this. In closing, the use of genetic information in designing personalized education plans for children based on their genetic predisposition is reductionist. In other words, it reduces a very complex issue, education and human development, to something that's mere biology. And it raises many ethical concerns and should not be encouraged. An inclusive, multidisciplinary educational approach that values the whole person will reduce the potential harm of genetic categorizations. By acknowledging each individual's potential and nurturing the whole person, not just his biology, we can guide students towards a healthy, well-rounded environment that fosters growth and equal opportunity for all. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much too. And thank you, Dr. Gush.
Thank you very much.